Hi, my name is Vincent. I'm a senior Salesforce consultant with OpFocus, and a common request that we see is how can we see how many days an opportunity has spent at any given stages. Um, so what's a use case for this? Perhaps one reason is to be able to see if there's any trend um, when we look at closed won versus closed lost opportunities. Maybe see if for example for closed lost opportunities, it just so happened that they tend to spend way much time at a specific stage. Perhaps like an opportunity that was closed lost will tend to spend twice as much time in stage needs analysis before being lost. And maybe we can use that information to look at the currently open opportunities and see if they're all on track to be won, or if some are in danger of being closed lost because they've been stalling for too long. Perhaps we also want to use that for to send automation reminders to people. Reminders like, okay, this opportunity has been stuck at quote sent for too long. You know, we should have expected to hear back from the clients by now. Can you do a follow up to see if if this is still an ongoing opportunity, or if it should be marked as closed loss? Example like this. And currently in Salesforce, there's no out-of-the-box easy solution for that. So I'm going to show you today two different solutions. The first one is a little bit simpler than the second one, but has some limitations. And so let's start with this one. So for the record, I'm going to be using this test environment with out-of-the-box stages that Salesforce usually puts on a brand new environment. So of course your stages will be different, so make sure you apply logic to your own stages. So here I have created two sets of fields, and so I'm going to start by looking at the ones on the left. So you see these are date fields, and there's one start date field for every open stages that exist. And also for the record, these date fields are editable here in my example, but they really are meant to be read-only if you were to put them on page layouts. Um, because we don't want users to go and change the dates here to maybe cheat on the actual numbers. Um, so yes, they are all date fields, and they are all updated through a process builder. So the way this process builder works is basically we want to see once when you create or you edit an opportunity. Um, so as it moves through the stages, we want to update the start date to that day's date. So for example, if I were to take this opportunity, which is currently needs analysis, and change it to value proposition, I want the value proposition date here to be updated to today. So let's do it as an example. So I'm going to set it to value proposition, and you'll see that it is updated to be today's date. So this is the process builder that drives these fields. So of course it uh, triggers off the opportunity object when it's updated or created. Um, and I've put everything into one criteria, but you can put different conditions per stage here as you go down the list, if that is easier for you to read. So in my case, the one condition I have is that either the opportunity is new or the opportunity is changed, the field stage is changed. So if you were to put one per stage, you could say either it's new or the stage equals whatever stage you want to set each condition to. But I didn't do it this way. Instead, I have all the fields here uh, updated as independent actions. I didn't put all of them in the example here. I just put three of them and close date. But just imagine that we have one for all of those start dates. So the way that they work is, okay, so let's go back to the data here. We have a field prospecting start date. We want this field to be updated. I mean, in my personal conditions, the two things I want to do is I want to update this field is, first of all, this field doesn't have a value yet. And also the stage is actually, the respective stage to go with it. So for example, if here if this stage is blank and I set this property to qualification, I want to update this start date. I don't want to update any other start date fields, of course. So this is what I'm doing here. So I'm updating the field start date to be equal to today, prospecting start date, but only if those two conditions are met. Prospecting start date, the field in question here doesn't already have a value, so is null equals true. And also I want the stage to be equal to prospecting. So if I look at qualification, same logic, except we're looking at the stage equals qualification and that the field qualification start date is not null to be updated, and so on, like value proposition, the one that we just tried just now. And finally, close date is a little bit different. I set it so that, yes, the field close date needs to be null so that we update it to today. But instead of looking at the stage on the second condition, we look at this standard field that is called closed. API name is closed. So that's the checkbox. So if it equals true, then we want to update the close date to be today. Right, so that updates the fields here. Now, these fields on the right are formula fields, and you see that there's one for each start date. And the way that these work is pretty simple. Um, so first of all, we want to see here if there's a start date to go for the duration field. If there is no start date, then we want to see nothing here, like this example here. So there's no start date here. This is a blank field. Same with these ones. That makes sense. We don't want to see anything here if it was never set to this particular stage. So that's the first condition. If it is not, it does have a date here. Then we want to look at the one just below. I put them in order as they. So from top to bottom here is the same as from left to right here. So we want to look at the next stage. Is there a start date on qualification? No, if so, then we do that date minus this date, and that's the number you'll see here. If not, then we look at this stage here. If there's a start date, then we do this one minus this one, and we see the number here. So again, the 27th minus the 20th, very simple. Yes, it does equal 7. If there were no start date here, then we would look at this one, and so on down the list until we get to close date. Um, if there is no date here as well, then we'll look at today's date and we'll do today minus that date. So in this example, there is a start date here, so we do the 27th minus the 20th, and that's our number here. So the same logic applies here, except we start from this one and go down. So as we go down the stage, the formula gets smaller and smaller because we need to look at less date fields before we resort to using today. So if we look at the logic here, so basically, um, yes, so we look at this one, so that is 27 minus 20th, that's 7. And for this one, we look at the 1st of May minus 27, that's 4 days, that's great. And this one, since there's no further dates down the list, then we look at today's date, which is the 1st of May, so that's today's date. So there's no days between today and that date, because that's today's date, but if I were to change it to something else, let's say yesterday, and save, then this will be changed to 1, and you'll see that this one updated to 3 from 4 because now there's 3 days between those 2 days. What that also implies is that as we move, forward in time, naturally, this number will tend to go up by 1 every day until it is the stage is changed to something else. So just by looking at these numbers, we should be able to assume that we have an opportunity set to value proposition. And then this number will keep going up until we mark it to something else. So let's say I move it to perception analysis, and that's going to be the number here that will start going up by 1/1 every day until we hit the next stage, and so on until we hit the close date. So the major limitation here is that if you tend to go back and forth on those stages, so let's say I'm at value proposition now, I need to go back to needs analysis for some reason, that's gonna create some trouble here with those numbers. So if you have a very clean, very disciplined process where you can mostly only go forward here, then this process will work. But if you tend to do some jumping back and forth on stages, then this will not work anymore. Because let's say I'm moving here to qualifications, or maybe qualification start date a week from now, then this date will be later than these ones, and that's going to change all the numbers that you'll see here. And also, it doesn't really give you the right numbers. Also, since those are formula fields, you cannot use those for automation. Let's say you wanted to send an email when an opportunity spends more than, let's say, 15 days at value proposition. You wouldn't be able to do this here because you cannot trigger those of duration fields. So that's the first solution. And then let's look at the second one. So the second one, so there's again a few fields that were created for the opportunity object, but there's a bit more than that. There's a custom object that was also created, and an app called declarative um, lookup rollup summary, which is used to sort of get these fields to behave like rollup summaries. So to explain the process before we go into detail, as I'm going to use this example here to start from scratch. So as we, every time we change the stage, we're going to create a new record on this object called opportunity stage change. And we're going to use DLRS, or declarative lookup rollup summary, the app, to roll up all the same one over. So we have a field here, duration, which we can't see right now, but we'll look at it later. The duration is rolled up into every relevant field here. So let's go into the logic of this process. So the first thing I did was create a duration field for every open stage. Um, so on the first solution, these were formula fields. Here they are number fields. And again, they are editable here in my example, but they're really meant to be read-only if you were to put them on page layouts. So those dates are going to be sort of the end result of this whole process. Um, so again, what I explained was that as we move from stage to stage, we are going to create these records on the object called opportunity stage changes, which is this object here. It's a very simple object. The only custom fields I created was, first of all, a master detail to the opportunity object. I created two date fields, a start date and an end date, and a duration field that we'll look at both of these together. We'll look at it in a second. And finally, a text field for the stage. So the duration is a formula field, sort of the same logic as those fields here. The only difference is that in my process, there's always going to be a start date on those records, so we're not going to have to say if there is a start date, because there will be one. So my logic is simply if the field end date is blank, we do today minus the start date. If not, if it's not blank, then we do the end date minus the start date. So that is our object. So how are those records created? Through a process builder here. So I called it opportunity stage change. Again, the naming convention is really up to you to decide to keep or not. So I'm starting from an opportunity object when a record is created or edited. I'm going to look at the second node first because this one is sort of a bit more complex. I'll come back to it in a second. So the node basically, I want two things to happen. Either I want the stage to be changed or the opportunity to be new. It's the same node as, where is it? Here, you see, on my first example, on the first scenario, same condition here. But I also want the opportunity to be either not closed or that we're just either closing it or unclosing it. The reason is, I don't want to create some more records every time an opportunity is closed or stays closed if you have more than two closed stages. But so this is just like an extra step to be careful not to create too many records. But really the meat here is this one here. We want to make sure that every time you change the stage, and in fact this one, you don't really need to have this second condition here. I just put it here for um, just to be not to create too many records. So if you change the stage or you create a new opportunity, then we're going to create a new opportunity stage name record. The only value we're going to put in is the field opportunity. Remember, that's the master detail. So we're going to use the current opportunity ID. The stage text field, we're going to put the stage name from the opportunity, and the start date is going to be today. So if I look at this example here, um, I changed well, I created it today. You see here, well, not really, but let's say I created it today. If I look here, you'll see that it has a start date to be on today. There's a duration set to 0 because there's no end date, so we're looking at today minus that date. But if I were to cheat a bit and pull it back a few days, then you'll see that now it's 3 days from today. Okay, so these records are created. So right now it's stage prospecting. If I were to change it to something else, value proposition, then it's going to create yet another record here. You see one for value proposition. It has a start date, doesn't have an end date. You see that this one now has an end date. We're going to see how this works. But what this also means is that if I were to send it back to prospecting, it's going to create yet another record for prospecting. So that's 2 for prospecting and 1 for value proposition. So you see here. So this is good for back and forth because we just keep adding, since during the same day, we went from value proposition back to prospecting, this one is going to be 0. And this one is currently 0, but is set to go up by 1 every day if it stays the current stage. Two things. So we want to be able to flag the end date as we move from an opportunity stage to another. So right now, you see here we have a field called current opportunity stage change, which is number 23, which is the one that was just created now. So this field is a lookup field, of course, and so this is what we're going to be managing with this extra stage here. So you see here where this is the very first step. We're saying if you change the stage and there is a value on that field. So current opportunity stage change is not null, false, you see here. What we want to do is update that current record, where is it here? That current record to have an end date. So that's a bit weird to explain, but basically this record here that we see doesn't have an end date. So as we're gonna change it to something else, well, we want to say, okay, so this is the current stage, put an end date on this one, then create a new record here as a second step, and then we have another process builder, and this is where it all wraps up together on the opportunity stage change process, which says if you create a record, and this only applies on creation, by the way, not when it's created or edited, only on creation. If you don't have an end date, then you mark this record as the current opportunity stage change record on the opportunity. So to explain again, because it might be difficult to understand. So um, this is the current stage, the current stage change record, which is prospecting. So let's say I change it to ID decision maker. What's going to happen is the first step, we're going to say, go to this record here. It doesn't have an end date, put today's date. Then we create the second, the other stage change record to mark that now it's been set to, I think I did say ID decision makers. And then so this is all on the first process builder. And the last process builder said, okay, so this new stage was created a new record here with no end date. We're going to take that new record and push it as the current opportunity stage change here. So let's do it as an example. So ID decision makers. Okay. So just to look at the result, we see here that we have a new 24, that's ID decision makers. We see that first of all, what it did was put an end date on the previous one. Then it created this record, and then it took this record and flagged it as the current one on the opportunity. So that's the whole logic of the process. Now, and I'm sorry because this doesn't work in this environment. It has some limitations, but we should also see here those numbers go up. So here, for example, if I look at all of them, I should see a number of 3 on prospecting because we see 3 here, and we should add also 3 here, the 0 here, so 3 plus 0 equals 3. And we should also see 0 for value proposition and ID decision makers. Um, sorry, here. So we should see here, I think it was a 3, and then a 0, and then a 0. I don't remember which ones were which, but these are supposed to be updated through an app called Declarative Lookup Rollup Summary. It's a free app. You should see the link in the blog content. So it's a free app, and the way that it works, I have it set up in a different environment which doesn't house the whole logic. Um, but this is, for example, the logic for the very first field. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, I'm going to call it prospecting. Uh, the name here doesn't really matter. It's just for you to see which ones are which. I'm saying, okay, on the account parent sorry, not account, opportunity. On the opportunity parent object, um, so that's the object where the result will be pulled in. We want the data to come from the object opportunity stage change, and we really want to use the API name here with the underscore and the C at the end. What field is used to link opportunity stage change to opportunity? That's our, if I go back here, that's our field called opportunity. So we want to use the information on the field name here. And then here we want the relationship criteria to be the stage equals prospecting. So the stage is here equals prospecting, because we don't want, of course, to update this field. Where is it? The prospecting field if the stage is not prospecting. The field to aggregate is the field called duration, this one here, which is the number that we saw. It's going to be a sum, and we're going to put all those prospecting records here on this field called prospecting duration, which happens to be this field here. So once we set it as active, if it's your first one, you need to set it as inactive first, then you can save it, and then you can set it to active, because you need to create a trigger for that, which the package handles for you. So you just set it to real-time with sharing mode system. So what does that mean is that every time you're going to create a new stage, the process will always update those numbers here. But you also want those numbers to update overnight, because the current stage duration will go up by 1 each day, because you remember that duration field here, as before, if there's no end date, we're going to look at today's date minus start date. And since today isn't the same day as tomorrow and as yesterday, we want that number here to update every day, so that we always have the up-to-date information. To do that, once this is created, you simply click on schedule calculation, and you basically just leave it this way. That means that it will update every night at 2 a.m. and just setting it by clicking on this button here. So it will be run in real time and also run on a scheduled job every night. So you do this with every one of those fields, and they will update accordingly. So now, since those are editable fields, you will be able to use them for automation. Let's say, saying if this field, ever becomes 20 or more on an open opportunity, then we can send an email to the user to warn them that this opportunity is in danger of being of stalling too long. And also, as you move back and forth on stages, you're not resetting the information like you would on the first solution. So that makes this one also a bit more powerful. But as you see, it's a little bit more complicated. But I'm sure if you try to implement it the same way that as it was done here, that it should work just fine. So that's it for this demonstration. You'll find more information or more details with screen captures on the blog article. So feel free to reach to us if you have any questions, or if there's anything that you might want to add on top of this existing process. Thank you.